So we're going to get started now. And of course, most of these you've probably already seen, but I decided to take the liberty to go ahead and cut and paste it into this PowerPoint presentation so that you can see what I'm talking about. And I also tried to do bullet points. The main things, of course, the sky conditions, what type of weather that could possibly be happening, and most of the time, I'm talking a lot about the seasons. That's huge in a lot of these paintings. So when you're looking at the Giovanni Panini, this is, of course, landscape from 1740. And the one thing about this that I think is really important is that you're really looking at outdoor living. Folks are outside, they're exploring, they're enjoying outdoors, doing different things. But based on the sun angle, you can see the lush greenery. Of course, you do have some green. And then in addition to that, you see folks with no shoes on. So obviously, warm climate, it's warm at the point at this time. But one thing I also see, and it's not really good in this one, but I like to look at the types of clouds. So we're looking at cumulus clouds here. Of course, you see plenty of sunshine in the background here, another indication of warm temperatures, but additionally, you see cumulus clouds forming. Cumulus clouds are fair weather clouds. They're not storm clouds. However, if you look on the far right of this picture, you will see some dark clouds. And when you go upstairs to look at it, you'll see that. In my opinion, that would be a storm that's possibly moving in or coming out. So with the folks being so comfortable here at the point of this picture, I would think it's not a situation where a storm just moved out, because they're pretty comfortable. Look like they've been hanging around for a while. However, if a storm starts to move in this way, then of course you would think people would start to find their way indoors to protect themselves from the storm. So, but yeah, when you look at the larger view, you'll see a dark storm cloud over in the upper right of this particular one. And these are, of course, the cumulus clouds that we're looking at. On to the next one now, the Canal. The thing I noticed about this one as well, dark storm clouds in place and then sunshine here. So we're still looking at summer, late spring, all based on the sun angle. Also, you're looking at fishing boats or gondolas. As you look at the boats, and in a clearer version, you can see that this guy is actually pushing off on his boat. So if you're looking at a storm, is this the beginning of the storm or is this the ending? Good question, because in the courtyard here, you also see folks, they're hanging around, enjoying their day. They're not running in really fast to get away from storms or anything. So you're probably looking at another situation where you see the storm clouds certainly nearby, darker in nature, giving an indication of, yeah, a storm could possibly be on the rise, could be moving in. The boats, the gondolas, people moving about the courtyard, and of course heading into the Coliseum. So this is a good question, because I personally would say that the storm has moved, there has been a storm in place and it's moving out. That would be my personal opinion. However, when looking at the subjects, you definitely don't see people who just had a heavy downpour in their neighborhood, because they look pretty comfortable being in an outdoor setting. All right, moving on. So, of course, this is anonymous. Iron Bridge at Shropshire. Gotcha. So when you're looking at this, cloud types are really important. Now, this is something where you see several different types of clouds in one painting. As we look at the background clouds, they're almost like a blanket. Of course, you see some mountains here. Stratus clouds is what I believe these to be. Stratus clouds often form around mountains. They are almost like a blanket. And of course, whenever you see fog, when you go out early in the morning, a stratus cloud is basically, fog is a stratus cloud on the ground. And you often see stratus clouds that form right around mountainous regions. So I assume that this background layer is a strata formation back here. However, the foreground clouds that you see up in the front, they're really thin clouds and they have some depth. So a thin cloud, of course, will be your cirrus cloud, a thin cloud with no moisture in it, but very high layer, which would have ice crystals in it, very high layer. However, because we have a little depth to some of these clouds, that tells me there's a little something else going on. So that gives me what I call a cirrocumulus cloud, part cirrus, part cumulus in the foreground clouds. and the foreground clouds here. Also, we're looking at what I would consider an early evening, sunset being close. Of course, you can see that orange shade to the nature of the picture. And then we can look at the human subjects. In a clearer version, you can see here's a young lady here with her child, and they're pretty comfortable. But what you also notice is she is definitely wearing a long sleeve shirt or maybe a fall type of outfit, certainly not shorts and a t-shirt type of thing. But these people are wearing, I'd say, an extra layer of clothing. So that would tell me that it's probably going to be an early fall season where it's not sweltering hot in a summer season. So that's just a good rendition. This lady, she's pretty well dressed as well. Also, there are a few people sitting here. They're certainly enjoying the outside, which you can do in the fall season, but you want to have an additional layer on. Also, some of that summer greenery. Of course, you see plenty of green here, but you see a few treetops here that are starting to get a green nature, a brown nature to it. Of course, an indication that leaves are starting to turn brown as we, of course, get that seasonal change. All right, this is a really good indication of what I call a stable air mass. Whenever you have high pressure in place, it's really hard to get clouds to really form and do what we call bubble up, get higher. So when the air mass is really stable, high pressure and control, the atmosphere has trouble giving us some good clouds. So this is what I see in this rendition. So hard for the air to start rising, and that's what we call when the atmosphere is capped. When that high pressure is over us, it's just hard to break through it, for warm air to break through the cap. And so when you get plenty of just pretty blue sky, very few clouds, maybe a thin cloud or two, that gives you an indication of a capped environment. Another indication of just no moving air, of course, you're looking at the water, which is almost completely calm. Nothing really going on here, no white caps, no choppiness going on, but you do see some lush greenery here. Lush trees in place as well. I think you have one subject here that's just enjoying the view, but you're looking at a very stable atmosphere here, just quiet and nothing going on. I do think it would be a summer season because of all the dark greenery that you see here. I think the biggest indication of this is, of course, the color. Just a dry environment, probably, of course, some type of desert atmosphere, desert kind of atmosphere, extremely dry. You're certainly not talking about any cloud cover because you can't get any moisture in place, so you certainly can't get any clouds to form. But stable, no clouds, and also the absence of any true vegetation. You have one or two little areas here where you may see some vegetation, but not a lot, extremely dry as well. But then just almost like a dust cloud being formed here. Not enough to be called a haboob, of course, a big dust storm, but enough to show you, of course, they're kicking up some dust here. So it was probably a completely clear and stable environment until they came along to kind of kick up a little dust there. So extremely dry at sunset. Moving on, of course, South Carolina landscape, always my favorite. Late spring, early summer, I'm thinking, reason being. So what's going on here? Weather-wise, I do see freshly plowed fields in place, green vegetation. Either the fields have just been planted or they're going to be planted, I would think. But when you look at the sky back behind it, it's giving us an indication of thunderstorm clouds, which are cumulonimbus clouds. Storms are in the background. They're moving out, or are they moving in? Well, I'm also thinking that they're moving out. Based on, you see these small trees in the background, it's almost like they're breaking in response to wind going in towards the right of the picture. If you add that with the foreground, I'd say this is mud. I'd say perhaps it was just really wet around here. And I'd say this is some mud. Perhaps the horse eating the greenery, or he could be licking a little moisture that's left over on top of the vegetation there. But I definitely say the storm has been there, the wind blowing, moving out, and it's left us with some muddy patches in place here. So, and this young man, he's probably pretty happy. We always love to see rain moving in when you got freshly planted fields. What's next? This is another one, the Claude Monet. It's beautiful, but of course you have to kind of peer in really closely. Me personally, it really makes me think about the Mississippi River. I did go to school in Mississippi, visited Mississippi River several times, and when you look at the river, of course, wide body of water, it's not moving at this point, but when you see almost an island-like feature in the middle of water, it tells you at some point this water was moving. Usually when you get an island to start forming, something in the middle of a body of water, trees, logs, something came down that river and got caught up, stopped, somehow, some way, it caused a feature to form in the middle of that river. That is certainly what this would be if you're looking at a wider body of water. And I think we're looking at wider just because as you look at the background, you can see that we're not looking at other land features, meaning this would be on the land and all of this would be land. So I would think we're looking at almost like an island that has formed in the middle of this huger body of water. But at the time of this painting, you can see this water's not moving. Stable, no wind blowing. In the background here, very hard to make out the exact sky condition, but if I was to say perhaps some thin cirrus clouds, of course, the absence of moisture, the cirrus clouds would tell you that is the absence of moisture. Your cumulus clouds, of course, are filled with moisture, but your cirrus clouds, very high, very thin, filled with perhaps ice crystals. So good rendition of that. Makes me think of the Mississippi River personally. Here's a good one from Manhattan, 1937. High pressure and control, very few clouds in place. Very few clouds, but what do we see more than anything in this picture? All that smoke. I mean, it's billowing from here, there, and everywhere. And this would be the reason for smog. Now here, if you get a pocket of dusty air moving in, everybody's calling the TV station. However, in this situation, they don't have, I'm sure this is probably before they started to have emissions regulations and everything, but what happens, you have what's called an inversion. And that's the word I have here, inversion. The reason for smog, generally, if you were to lay on your back and look straight up at the atmosphere, the temperature of the air should slowly go down. Colder, a little bit colder, a little bit colder, a little bit colder. However, every now and then, you get a warm pocket of air that'll move in, and it'll stop that decrease in temperature. If you get that pocket of air to move in that's warmer than everything else, it's going to stop the whole atmosphere. Urban heat islands, like this one, cause little warm pockets of air to move up. If that pocket of air is in place, everything below it is going to stay below it. That's why you have smog. That's why you have such a terrible situation in, larger cities. Not a little city, not a little town like ours, but when you're in Manhattan, of course, in LA, and you see smog issues, usually there is what we call an inversion in place. High pressure, stable atmosphere is stopping the air from blowing away, basically, and from blowing all this dirty air out at the surface. And yeah, I'm sure it's well before they had any emissions regulations, because that's a bit much. That's a bit much. Warmer air law, I think we covered all of that. All right, we're finishing this up pretty fast. So here's my last one. No, I think I have 2 or 3 more. Sunset, certainly because of the orange color you see here. You see the sunset in the background. Marshy land here. Water, of course, not moving. Probably not enough water to move. Maybe a muddy kind of atmosphere here, muddy water here, but very stable atmosphere. You don't see a whole lot going on here. Again, no cloud cover in place, sun going down, no trees breaking, but a little vegetation on the trees. But certainly when you get a marshy situation, you'll see these trees. Of course, they're in a dire situation. They're not really lush and green, despite the fact that they're in a marshy land. But nothing really going on here sky-wise, and then the sky. So again, probably a stable atmosphere where you're looking at high pressure, not a whole lot of presence of cloud cover. Probably one of my favorites here, another good one. Now, this is a fishing village. And so we're looking at, of course, the mountains. You see a mountainous area here. And whenever you have mountains, sometimes you have valley fog. We just talked about how the stratus clouds form and they cool and condense faster with the presence of land, meaning this mountain. These mountains that you see here. So you're going to see all these little areas that have this valley fog. And in the mountains, you're literally looking at thunderstorms. So at the top of these mountains, you probably run up there and run into a thunderstorm. If it's high enough, you'll probably run into a snowstorm. But again, this is all happening all in one picture. So you could have possibly a snowstorm, certainly a decent storm going up here at the top of these mountains, and then you have your fishing village here. So is this storm forming or is it moving away? The only thing that makes me think it's probably not a big issue for them and probably not forming, because these folks are fairly comfortable. They have boats all the way out here. They're still fishing. They seem to be going about their daily lives, doing the things that they have to do to catch their fish. So I don't think this is a situation where they're running indoors from a storm or trying to move out. However, you could also say this seems to be everyday life for them. So if a storm was to form, it probably wouldn't scare them that much. They'd probably just deal with it and get on back out to business as usual. Because when you're in a fishing village, I'm pretty sure getting the fish is the most important thing to you. Getting a little wet may not be a big deal. The other thing, of course, I noticed is the optical illusion. Do you see it? Do you see it? Almost looks like a clear funnel cloud here as it kind of looks through the mountains. I love it. Almost looks like that tornado. And if, of course, it would have that top, it would be a clear-cut funnel cloud going right down into the water, which we know that's not happening because, I mean, even then, we're also looking at very stable water here. Not a whole lot going on in terms of a breeze or is the wind blowing it to make it really choppy or anything. So I do believe that this is uh-oh, went too fast. How do I go back? I don't know. Went too fast. Let me see. I can do it the old-fashioned way. This is not a tablet. I'm almost done. Let's see. How many more did I have? This is the last one. This is the last one. Okay. Frederick Schaefer. So a rain shield. I see, thank you. I see Indian encampments. I do see a rain shaft over here, perhaps rain falling pretty vigorously and actively on the other side of this mountain. However, it's not stopping the people here from either sending their folks out on boats or perhaps receiving them in. I was actually thinking that this would probably be an early morning situation. Maybe, you know, they're getting up, they're heading out for the day to get the fishing done. As you see all these people, I guess, gathering around to send them off. I say that because there is a hint of haze or fog, and you usually see that in the morning hours when you start to see the sun coming up. You can certainly see more of a haze as opposed to at sunset when you see that haze in the deep part of the summer. Into green landscape and vegetation in place there. So we're not dealing with a winter or a fall situation. Also, these people, if you look really closely, most of them don't have a shirt or a top. They're not trying to keep themselves warm either. So certainly a good indication that it's not a cold environment. So they're coming in or going out, and a good indication that weather is not an issue. The rain that's coming down is going out over here. It's not an issue for these people, but it's certainly present in the background and foreground of this particular picture. Of course, you can see the sun somewhere towards here coming up. So I think it's an early morning picture. Awesome. Thank you. You were wonderful.